Supremacy Games. Chapter 1921–1930. Chapter 1921 The Fallen Kingdom. Felix. Asna murmured his name with a loving and relieved look, bathing in his godly and holy presence. At first look, she understood that his spiritual pressure had ascended past the celestials since his presence was so overwhelming. It made her feel like she was gazing at the universe itself. Unfortunately for the three rulers, they were also capable of feeling the same. This isn't possible, Amonare muttered at the start, but as he kept watching Felix's presence continue to grow more powerful, he couldn't help but bellow furiously, "This isn't right." "Lower your voice, Amun," Emer remarked after a deep exhale, "We are done." Medusa's expression turned ugly, knowing that if even Emer gave up, it only meant that our situation was truly doomed. To be honest, deep down, she also knew it. But Amonare still refused to accept this fact. "I am a celestial. I am eternal. I am not dying to a mortal born. Never." As he continued roaring until celestial flames broke out of his skin, Asna and Queen Ai found themselves incapable of keeping him down. Before they could reinforce their spiritual pressure, Amonare broke free at last and flew in the direction of Felix with his divine spear set in golden celestial flames. Athena and the rest of the viewers held their breath at the sight, understanding that Amonare sought to slay Felix before he came to his senses. Oh no! Even Asna's relief disappeared and was replaced by a worried look. However, before she could make her move to help her husband, Felix suddenly lowered his head until his eyes matched the rushing Amonare. The moment Amonare saw Felix's eyes, his entire expression froze. His reaction was understandable as Felix's eyes resembled an ocean of galaxies swimming in their pupils. They were mesmerizing, otherworldly, and most importantly, so dreadful that Amonare was capable of concocting a single thought. The windows of the universe. As the last word was registered in his mind, everyone was left petrified at the sight of Amonare getting lasered out of existence. His celestial flames, his divine weapon, his entire existence was utterly erased by a single white beam, leaving behind only one thing, the celestial heart. Under the stunned and silent looks of the viewers, Felix reached out with his finger and Amonare's celestial heart flew in his direction, or more precisely, his chest. Just like a rock thrown in the water, the heart passed through Felix's chest, leaving behind a soft ripple on his skin. Felix didn't even bother to check on it. He lowered his gaze, aiming it directly at the other two rulers, who had two different expressions. Emer was as calm as always, but this time, he had a defeated smile. Medusa had a look of utter despair. Both of them knew they could control their emotions and not show such a reaction, but at this moment, what was the point? "I know it's too much to ask, I know it's shameful to ask, but I have to know." Suddenly, Emer showed a bitter smile as he inquired, "Can I know what you saw on the other side?" Describing such disgusting behavior as shameful is too light. Asna sneered coldly. After everything that happened, the three rulers deserved nothing but absolute torture. To be this daring and shameless to ask for a favor was simply too much. Yet, to everyone's surprise, Felix actually answered him. "The other side, unfortunately for you, I need all 7 hearts together to open up the gateway." Felix replied indifferently as he pointed his finger at Emer and Medusa. As Emer gazed at the light emerging from Felix's finger, he couldn't help but sigh helplessly. He understood that Felix would never leave them alive as he merged with their hearts, which meant, "I hope the truth was worth all of this." That's the last thing he uttered before Felix deleted them out of existence like an author using a mere erasure to write off a character. With a snap of a finger, their celestial hearts integrated within his chest. Immediately after, silence took place in the void. There were no thunderclaps, no universal pillars, no announcements, nothing. It was like the three rulers' deaths meant nothing to the universe. But the truth was, it did imply a lot. It meant everything. However, the universe was no longer a mindless entity. The universe was Felix and Felix was the universe. After the three rulers' inevitable death, all he did was close his eyes and face the voided skies above, seemingly enjoying the peace. Alas, the peace was instantly disturbed by Asna's excited scream, "We did it! You did it, Felix! You actually did it!" It was followed by her instantly appearing next to him and giving him a tight hug while still repeating energetically, "We did it! We did it, sob, we did, sob, we did it!" It took no time before Asna's excitement was replaced by gushing tears, flooding down her cheeks and into Felix's shoulder. There, no need to cry, there is no more cause for you ever to weep again." Felix softened his expression as he caressed her hair gently, but the more he did it, the louder Asna cried like she had been holding on to them ever since her birth. It wasn't far-fetched to think so. Felix knew that Asna was quite emotional even while becoming a celestial. That's all because of the trauma she had gone through in her childhood and the way the three rulers made her feel like she was always a prisoner. A prisoner without any hopes of ever receiving freedom. After all, she was told that she would become the universe's consciousness after ascending, which meant she would be imprisoned to carry on the universal duties forever. If she didn't, she would ever be under the three rulers' reign. So, no matter which path she took, she would never obtain true freedom. Only now did she truly feel that shackles were broken at last and could do nothing but weep her eyes out as she kept hugging the love of her life and savior. As her tears kept flowing down, Felix's heart was gripped by a sudden wave of guilt, but, before Asna could notice it, he killed it off and kept caressing her back gently. Meanwhile, his pools of galaxies reflected a hint of rage as he gazed at the distant void. Why was he mad? Who was he mad at? Only one person in this cosmos knew. When you wrap things out, I think it's moment we have our little talk. Cronus's bitter voice resounded in Felix's mind out of nowhere. Chapter 1922 The Fallen Kingdom 2. Cronus, I knew that a truth capable of making you erase your memories wouldn't be pleasant, but still, nothing could have prepared me for it. Felix replied with a low tone, nothing. It seems like you have unlocked all of your memories. Cronus sighed. Memories, hey. Felix smiled in derision. Felix. Just as Felix wanted to continue, a gentle presence reached out to him telepathically, catching his attention with a mixture of warmth and sorrow. It was Queen Ai with her consciousness flickering, dimming like the last embers of a dying flame. Her voice echoed softly in his mind, making him feel her presence slipping, fading with every second. This made Felix instinctively reach out, desiring to use his omnipotent powers to restore her. But what's the point? She murmured with a faint gentle smile. Felix froze akin to being struck by a lightning bolt at the realization that Queen Ai seemed to have found out the truth as well. You know, don't you? He asked, his eyebrows raised, but how? I glimpsed through the veil of existence, she replied with a voice growing fainter. When my processing power ascended to celestial ranks, I understood things that had once been hidden, the truth that eluded even the three rulers. Ha, how ironic, we have been searching for the truth forever, and the moment I found it, everyone around me seemed to have figured it out too. Felix clenched his fists, a bitter smile tugging at his lips as he watched her consciousness slowly dissipate. Soon, he shook those thoughts and asked with a disoriented tone, what do you think should I do next? I am dreading my options. For a moment, her presence grew warmer, like a mother giving him a comforting embrace. Accept the supreme power, Felix. Whether here or on the other side, there is only one truth, strength gives you freedom of choice. She paused, giving him a faint smile, use that strength to follow your heart. As her voice faded at the end of her sentence, the mental connection between them thinned like a mist until Felix found that he could no longer sense her. Queen Ai. He called out, his voice barely a whisper in his mind. Alas, there was no response. Queen Ai was gone, her awareness faded peacefully into the void, leaving behind a gentle stillness and a bittersweet memory of her final words. Felix stood with Asna still in his embrace as the weight of her message settled over him while he looked toward the horizon. Accept the power, and follow his heart. The path was uncertain, but for now, it was enough. Felix? What's wrong? Asna lifted her head and eyed him with a concerned tone after sensing the shift in his heartbeats. You will know, soon enough. Felix took hold of her hand and led her outside of the dimensional pocket, which had already turned into an empty void. The moment they got out, an unforgettable scene was reflected in their pupils. The Eternal Kingdom, which was once an indomitable fortress of celestial power and grandeur, was crumbling right before their eyes. Zeus' thundercloud domain lost its sparkle as the clouds dissipated and the storms quietened down, seemingly mourning the collapse of the kingdom. Poseidon's finite blue ocean was absorbed into a vortex that led to the void at the very bottom of the kingdom, creating a scene resembling a full sink emptying out. Artemis forests and jungle that breathe life into the kingdom wilted down, leaving mere dried-out trees holding weakly against the wind. Even the celestial city, the capital, and the heart of the eternal kingdom did not escape from the aftermath of the three rulers' death and most importantly, the disappearance of the celestial energy, which pulsed life through the kingdom's veins. Felix and Asna stood together on a high vantage point above the celestial city. All they did was watch the apocalyptic scene unfolding before them. We have been forsaken. Our gods have forsaken us. Save me. I don't want to die. Arg! My legs. When Felix heard the despairing cries of the citizens below as they escaped from the fallen buildings and shattered grounds, he felt absolutely nothing. It was like he was staring at objects or numbers. Yet, he still showed his merciful side. Pain is still real. He murmured as he snapped his finger and helped everyone in the Eternal Kingdom escape the unavoidable damnation. Meanwhile, Asna's grip tightened around Felix's hand as her face reflected somewhat of sadness and nostalgia. The recollections came rushing back to her in waves, the laughter, the joy, the innocence of her youth spent in these very lands. She could see flashes of her past in the flickering ruins, the pranks she and Apollo had pulled in the palace gardens, their laughter echoing through the hallways as they darted from one hiding spot to another. She remembered the warmth of Unigen's gatherings, the endless pranks, the peace before everything had changed. A faint, wistful grin crossed her face as those good recollections flooded her mind. Despite the pain of the present, there was a part of her heart that mourned the loss of those golden days, those recollections that would soon exist only in her mind. The kingdom had been her home, but now, it was nothing but a fading memory. As for Felix, his recollections of this carried a different weight. All he remembered was the endless battles, the calculated escapes, the nights spent running and hiding, always aware of the threat that loomed over his shoulders. The close calls and the near deaths made his stay in the Eternal Kingdom marked by a struggle to survive. Thus, he felt not an ounce of regret at the collapse of this kingdom that ruled the universe from the shadows of celestial brilliance. However, deep down, he knew that such emotions were directed at the wrong target. It's strange, isn't it? Asna whispered, to see everything we once knew, just gone. It was bound to happen. They built their world on a foundation of lies. Felix replied. Lies? Asna raised an eyebrow. Instead of answering, Felix waved his hand and manifested the massive prophecy tablet before her. As he gazed at the black portal at the very top of the tablet, he couldn't help but utter, the entire universe's history was rewritten 100 times to fulfill this exact prophecy. A prophecy promised freedom for the three rulers and answers for the seekers. But in reality, he chuckled in derision, catching Asna by surprise. Then, he confessed as he turned toward her, it was nothing but a tool to achieve our agenda, or to be more precise, a promise to our son and future generations. Our agenda? Promise to our son? What are you talking about? Asna's pupils thinned in disbelief. Have you already discovered the truth? Yes. Felix extended his hand toward Asna's cheek and placed it gently. Then, he smiled bitterly as he said, I am afraid you won't like it. Before Asna could respond, Felix linked her mind with his own and showed her everything from the beginning to the end. It took merely a second for Asna to process what she had just witnessed. While it was a mere second on the outside, the things she saw and learned left her eyes widened to the limit in dread, disbelief, and utter stupefaction. It was us all along. She spoke under her breath as she held her head, feeling like it had gotten a million times heavier. We were always the villains in this story. Felix placed his hand on her shoulder as he gazed into the horizon, yet, in the reflection of his eyes, there was no void, but instead, a flood of scenes gushing on the surface. Most of those scenes had nothing to do with this universe. Chapter 1923 The Original Timeline. The year 2044, Earth calendar, 20 years after the Alexander Kingdom discovered Earth. In New York metropolis, the Maxwell Tower stood as a sleek structure of dark glass and steel, representing both the elegance and formidable power of the Maxwell business empire as it dominated the skyline with an air of prestige. At the topmost floor of their building, Felix Maxwell sat at a long polished mahogany table with a relaxed posture, but his gaze was sharp as he observed the Maxwell elders around him. He exuded an air of refined confidence and quiet authority. His golden hair was slightly tousled yet impeccably styled, framed by a face defined by sharp and mature features. His piercing blue eyes held intelligence and depth like he had spent most of his years following a single ambition. He was clad in a tailored black suit that fit him with effortless precision, making him command attention from anyone. At the moment, the Maxwell elders, Abraham, Albert, and Charlotte were gazing at him with a solemn expression. All three looked younger than their actual age as they were in their 80s and 90s, yet, looked just like any other middle-aged people in their early 40s, even baldy Albert grew hair again. Abraham leaned forward, his fingers steepled, and spoke in his low and commanding voice. The Alexander's Holdings has offered a new promising opportunity. We received from Intel that they plan to establish a new trading route connected to Mars to search for Earth elemental stones. If we collaborated with them to facilitate their mining process, we can utilize this new trading route for our business ventures. What do you think? He asked as he gazed at Felix. Felix met Abraham's gaze evenly, his mind already racing with potential strategies. He was fully aware of the risks and benefits that this opportunity had presented. Alexander's Holdings is the biggest company in the kingdom since it was founded by the royal family itself. Its GDP alone is worth 1 million times more than our entire solar system combined. Felix replied calmly, securing a partnership with them is nearly impossible even if our company was considered one of the best in our solar system. Whatever amount of money we offer, it won't make them bat an eye. In other words, we have no value in their eyes, which gives us no negotiation power for a deal. Charlotte agreed. We all know this. Albert rubbed his eyelids, but, this is a unique opportunity to latch our family to the royal family, we have to find a way. I know, that's why to secure a foothold, we'll need to present a partnership that makes us indispensable to them, something beyond just trade. Felix smiled faintly. If we can offer exclusive access to our rare cuisine-based resources, we might have the leverage we need. Albert nodded approvingly, his calculating eyes narrowing as he considered Felix's words. True, exclusivity could work in our favor since great food is always in demand regardless of social status. But, we aren't the sole company with exclusive resources on our home planet. Felix gave a slight smile, his fingers tapping the table as he spoke. True, but we are the only ones with the intel about their upcoming route development. If we make the first move and leave the best impression possible, they won't reject our advances related to their new route. I see, you are suggesting we use a friendly approach instead of a business approach. Thus, once we come to ask for a small favor, they won't outright reject us. Albert nodded in approval. Exactly, all we need is to build a bit of trust with their representatives responsible for this task. If they find elemental stones on Mars, we will be allowed to share their secured route and avoid the pirates. If they find nothing, we can convince them to leave the route under our management to deliver our exclusive resources at a discounted price. Once trust is built, we can expand our partnership and expand our family roots across the kingdom and potentially even to the Mariana Empire. The elders exchanged looks, each considering his words. Abraham's lips curved into a rare smile. You've done your homework, Felix. If Robert and your parents were still with us, I am sure they would be proud. Felix showed a mere faint smile as he answered, if they were still alive, there wouldn't be a reason for me to be here. Ha ha ha, that applies to all of us. Albert laughed, they would have already made the Maxwell a business stronghold name across the kingdom in no time. True, some people are just born into business. Charlotte smiled. After Felix and the elders chit-chatted a bit more, they postponed the meeting until tomorrow, excusing everyone. When Felix left the meeting and glanced at the beautiful neon lights of the metropolis from above the clouds, the only thought coursing through his mind was, I should return home. I have been away for 3 days straight, Nico must be throwing a tantrum for me. He showed a gentle smile as he took out a holographic picture, showing himself, Asna, and a little cute child, with golden hair and blue eyes. The picture was taken in the UVR as they were in a fantasy-based amusement park. He was carrying Nico on his shoulders while Asna was leaning on his chest and holding his hand tightly. She had a beautiful smile painted across her face like she was living a blissful and loving life with her family. When Felix saw her smile, he couldn't help but kiss his fingers and place them on her face, feeling like his heart was cleansed from all the stress and problems he faced daily being one of Maxwell's elders. Without wasting any more time, Felix took the elevator down to the first floor, receiving respect from all family and staff members working in the tower. After he was done with the greetings, he got into a sleek black hovercar, which was already awaiting him at the front door. Then, he greeted the driver with a polite smile, "How was your day, Jack?" Jack lowered the separating glass between them and welcomed back with a faint chuckle, "Not as busy as yours, boss." Same response as always. Felix chuckled at the dried-up joke he always heard every time he asked his bodyguard and driver. As for the informalities between them, Felix thought Jack a family member since he was his bodyguard ever since he was a child. He was even sent to Sky Pearl Island with him during the family assessment and was near him when the Elungster Kingdom found Earth 20 years ago. Where to, boss? Home. Right away. Jack lifted the separating glass again and steered away, leaving Felix to recline his head on the glass window. The neon lights of Maxwell Tower faded behind him. Yet, his mind was still sharp, focusing on the next steps for his proposal to Alexander Holdings. He knew that persuading their representatives wouldn't be easy, the competition was fierce, and Alexander's staff members were known for their arrogance. Felix's fingers tapped rhythmically against his knee as he ran through his approach. Lost in thought, he was suddenly startled by a sharp chime from his wrist. As he tapped on his AP bracelet's small screen, a holographic message alert flickered in front of him. It was pulsing with a red glow. Felix's brow furrowed as he read the message under his breath. Felix Maxwell, you are required to attend a classified meeting under the authority of the Empress of the Metal Race. Attendance is mandatory. Click the link underneath for more details. Felix swiftly fixed his sitting posture as the weight of the message took over his mind. This wasn't an ordinary request. The Empress of the Metal Race seldom convened mandatory meetings with even the top 10 rulers. Don't even mention him, a small businessman from a rural area that wasn't known to most of Alexander Kingdom's citizens. Thus, his first thought was I mistaken for someone else? It can't be, such mistakes are impossible for Queen AI. He frowned as he reached out to press on the link. As expected, the moment he clicked it, he was dazed to see that the details involved his full name and even ID number, making him understand that no mistake was made. As he continued reading through the details, he found that the meeting would be held in 3 hours and the location was unknown. But, he understood that once the time came, he would simply be teleported to the designated location. I don't understand what's going on, but ignoring this invitation is a death sentence. Understanding that the Empress of the Metal Race's authority was at the highest in the SG Alliance made him do one thing. He accepted the invitation in a heartbeat and wished for the best, as he was nothing but a mere human with no strength to him whatsoever. Chapter 1924 The Original Timeline 2. Some time later, Felix stepped out of his car and approached the grand gates of his late grandfather's mansion, in the Upper East Side of New York. This was one of the mansions Felix grew in due to its proximity to the Maxwell Tower. After his parents passed away in the helicopter accident and his grandfather had a heart attack during the Alexander Kingdom's mental invasion, he inherited all of their properties. As he walked up the stone steps, the large double doors opened smoothly, revealing Leela, the ever-diligent housekeeper. She greeted him with a polite, knowing smile, and a prudish posture. "Good evening, Mr. Maxwell," she said, bowing her head slightly. "Allow me to take those." Before he could respond, Leela knelt to remove his shoes, her movements swift and practiced. "You don't have to, but thank you." Felix nodded in appreciation, accustomed to her quiet attention to detail. Just like Jack, Leela was one of his closest assistants, who he had grown up with from his childhood. After he embarked on carrying his grandfather's legacy in this new era, he hired Leela as his housekeeper since he trusted only a few people in his home. "Your shower is ready, sir," she informed him, gesturing down the hallway. "Your change of clothes has been laid out for you." Noveldrama.org holds this content. Felix gave a brief nod of thanks, feeling the fatigue from the day beginning to set in as he followed her lead. But he didn't let it consume him, as Queen Ai's message was still roaming free in his mind. As he was being guided by Leela down the hall, Felix came to a brief stop in front of 3 massive portraits hung near each other. With a faint appreciative smile, Felix reached out with his fingers and touched the frame of each portrait while murmuring under his breath, "Father, Mother, Grandfather, I had a good day, I hope you did too on the other side." Seeing this, Leela halted and waited in silence, already used to this antic. While Leela wasn't with Felix when his parents died in a helicopter accident, she was with him when he heard the news of his grandfather's passing during the Day of Chaos. He was a mere teenager, already isolated on an island, which was a cry for help in itself from a child, who was born with all the riches, but no parents' love. Hearing that his last true family member, his grandfather Robert, who had raised him as a son, died of a heart attack, shattered his heart into pieces. However, instead of acting up just like after he lost his parents, she remembered how he vowed to uphold his grandfather's and parents' legacy at any expense. She was only saddened that it took the death of his grandfather for him to wake up and mature at last, making him finally put his talents into the family's business empire. Rest in peace. After a little respectful head bow and a soft prayer, Felix turned around and continued on his path. Seeing this, Leela shattered out of her daze and swiftly hastened her footsteps, leading him to the door of the shower room. "Have a nice shower, sir." With a soft smile and a small bow, she left him to his privacy, disappearing soundlessly down the corridor. Inside, Felix found everything as promised. The pristine shower room was prepped with fresh towels, steam already drifting from the hot water. His clothes, an elegant black lounge suit, comfortable yet stylish, were folded neatly on the counter, along with comfortable slippers and cufflinks. He took his time in the shower, letting the hot water wash away the stress of the day. The weight of the Maxwell Empire, the pressure of negotiations with Alexander Holdings, and the recent summons from the Empress all lingered on his mind, but he found a moment of calm here. When he finished, he dressed quickly and made his way to the living room with a gentle smile. The mansion was quiet, the only sounds were the distant ticking of a clock and the soft rustle of curtains in the evening breeze. However, as he entered the living room, the quiet was shattered by a sudden burst of energy. Out of nowhere, Nico sprang forward from behind the couch, his young cute face alight with excitement while his laughter filled the room. "Daddy!" Nico exclaimed, launching himself toward Felix with his arms wide. Felix's cool and composed expression softened instantly, a smile breaking through he braced himself for the ambush. Whoa, easy there Nico. Felix laughed, catching his son as the boy wrapped his arms around him like a little monkey. He felt a surge of warmth, the kind only a child could bring. Nico looked up at him with wide, eager sapphire blue eyes. Did you bring anything yummy? Felix chuckled, ruffling his son's hair. Of course, I wouldn't be called the dad of snacks if I didn't, will I now? Nico's eyes lit up as he saw Felix beam out a box of candies with a foreign alien language. Even the box seemed to be made out of non-earthling materials, making Nico recognize it immediately. Dandem's sweets. Nico immediately jumped out of Felix's embrace and hugged the box with an excited expression. That's it for Daddy. Felix's eyelids twitched as he chuckled at the sight of his son, showing more love to a box of candies than him even after 3 days of absence. Thank you, Daddy. Thank you. But, it seemed Nico was more sensible than what his age showed as he went to hug Felix's leg before quickly jumping on the couch. Just as he wanted to break the box open, a soft feminine voice resounded from the door, freezing them both in place. Dear, didn't I tell you to not sneak him candy before dinner? Nicholas, are you sure you want to open it right now? Following the voice, the other door to the living room opened, and a breathtaking woman stepped inside, wearing a flowing nightgown in soft rich hues that complemented her natural elegance. Her crimson hair was brushed to perfection, cascading down her shoulders in gentle waves. She had a touch of light makeup that highlighted her striking amber eyes. However, those eyes held a familiar glint of amusement, and a gentle reprimand as they settled on her husband. Felix gave a small guilty smile as he walked towards her, feeling betrayed when he observed that his son was repressing a giggle. I had a lot in mind and got ambushed by his cuteness, I couldn't say no, Felix said. Raising his hands defensively, I am a victim as much as you. Victim, is that so? Asna laughed as she crossed her arms. Seeing that his father was still in trouble, Nico glanced up at his mother with his best attempt at an innocent look on his face. Mommy, I was just going to eat a small piece. I promise. Seeing how both of them were giving her such innocent puppy looks, Asna's expression couldn't help but melt into a gentle smile. Well, since you two seem to be such partners in crime, I suppose I'll let it go, just this once. Felix laughed while giving her a loving hug followed by a quick peck on the lips. You know, I'd be lost without your forgiving heart. Asna rolled her eyes, but her smile lingered as she leaned into his hug, murmuring, I missed you, dear. I missed you too, love. Sorry for being away, work has been getting busier. Felix smiled as he caressed her back. I could tell, you didn't even join me in the UVR. Asna sighed as she fixed his attire, knowing that running an entire business empire was much harder than it seemed, especially during the SG Alliance and UVR era, where everything and everyone was connected. To be a latecomer into such a saturated market made it extremely difficult to carve one's path, which meant, Felix and the elders could sometimes go days without sleep. By taking pills. Also, something weird has just happened, Felix mentioned, his tone turning a bit solemn. Is it serious? Asna knitted her eyebrows, knowing that her husband rarely spoke about work in their home. Without saying much, Felix showed her the message he received. After reading it, Asna was exited with a deep solemn frown, realizing that this wasn't just weird, it was beyond concerning. How come the Empress called for you? I will be skeptical even if she called for the Milky Way leaders. She said. My exact thoughts, Felix replied while taking a seat on the couch. Asna sat next to him and picked Nico, placing him on her lap. As she helped him open the box of sweets, her thoughts were running wild with theories for such a ludicrous situation. Maybe, the metal race found something extraordinary with our planet and reached out to you since our family has a monopoly over many rare resources. I thought so too, but this doesn't summon an empress' attention. Felix shook his head. He knew that there were representatives, whose job was to deal with such stuff. A summon from the empress herself was of the highest order and treaded on issues he doubted he could even understand. Whatever she wants, give it. Asna said with a hint of concern, just make sure to come back safe. Don't worry, the metal race is the most pragmatic and respectful race of them all. Felix smiled, nothing bad will happen to me. Although Felix said this, he still couldn't help but feel a tingle of worry about the nature of the summon. Fortunately, he wasn't going to be exited waiting for long as 3 hours went by in the blink of an eye. As he sat on his bed with Asna beside him, a holographic link popped up in front of him, glowing with intense red. Be right back. Felix gave a little kiss on Asna's cheek and without hesitation, he pressed on the link. The moment he did so, his eyes closed shut and Asna gently laid him on the bed, gazing at his peaceful expression with a worried look. Please be safe. Chapter 1925 The Two Supremes. As Felix blinked his eyes open, they were assaulted by an intense unnatural brightness, forcing him to squint for a moment. When he regained his focus, he found himself standing on a vast silver metallic floor with walls that stretched up and out into an immense cubic expanse. Their reflective surface gleamed under the harsh, omnipresent light that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. The sheer size of the space was overwhelming, as if he were trapped inside an endless metallic labyrinth. Yet, this wasn't the most shocking part. Where am I? The hell? How come there are so many people? I knew it was too good to be true to be summoned by the Empress herself. As Felix looked around, his heartbeats quickened at the sight before him. All around him, stretching out as far as he could see, were people. Millions of humans were scattered across the massive hall, each person standing alone, separated from those nearby by an invisible boundary. It was as if a field of unseen barriers surrounded them, preventing anyone from moving or interacting with another. Although all of them were talking at once, there wasn't any irritating chit-chatter. Felix was more than capable of hearing the ones next to him talk to themselves, making him understand that no one had a single clue what was going on. What does the Empress want with this many people? Felix murmured as he tried to take a step forward, but the invisible walls responded, subtly guiding him back into his designated space. Knowing that it was useless, he started scanning the faces of the people around him. What he found surprised him to the core. Is everyone here famous and possesses a high social status in our galaxy? Questions raced through his mind as he scanned the vast sea of silent faces. He found famous scientists with achievements capable of covering entire walls. Famous businessmen, who he considered giants in the markets and held assets worth much more than the entire Alexander Kingdom. There were even scholars and celebrities mixed in here and there. Of course, what truly captured his focus were the kings and emperors of the strongest empires in the galaxy. Why are they here? And why the hell was I invited to such a gathering of stars? For the first time in a long while, Felix truly felt like he was in a place he didn't belong, surrounded by millions yet isolated. Fortunately, he wasn't left dwelling for too long on answers, as the moment the summons concluded, a massive slice of the front wall slid open, exposing a long bright corridor. From the corridor, the Empress of the Metal Race stepped forth in a humanoid form, resembling a feminine cyborg with expressionless features. She resembled any other metal race, confusing plenty of people, who had never seen her true form before. One of the kings bowed his head respectfully as he inquired, Empress 015XL, to what do we owe the pleasure? When the rest of the humans heard him call the Empress by her AI name, their expressions immediately turned solemn, knowing that they were in the presence of Her Majesty. In an emotionless manner, Empress Emily made a shushing motion with her finger, forcing the chatter to die out forcefully. It was like they were muted live. Listen and watch in silence, she said expressionlessly as she manifested a massive display before everyone. Everyone lifted their heads and focused on the screen that came to life, displaying a surreal distorted landscape in the void. Inhabiting this void were two unimaginable entities that seemed to defy logic. Their presence alone was overwhelming to the point that it cast a weight upon everyone's souls through the screen. A chilling silence engulfed the crowd as everyone's eyes moved from one entity to the other, scanning them whole. The first entity was a colossal pitch-black horse-like creature. No one knew its exact size since there was nothing in the void to use as a comparison, but their instincts screamed at them that it should be 1,000,000 times bigger than even the largest of galaxies. They didn't know why they felt like this, but it just happened. It moved with an eerie elegance, its 6 legs stepping silently, causing each motion to release a rippling shadowy trail. Across its massive body, thousands of vortex-like eyes opened and shifted, spinning endlessly, each filled with an abyss that seemed to gaze into the watchers' very souls. Upon its head sat a dark crown adorned with 6 spikes, each one surrounded by hundreds of halos. What is this monstrosity? I can't stare at it straight, it's just on a screen, why can't I do it? How marvelous, is this some new species discovered recently? Whether it was a king, a scholar, or a businessman, the watchers shivered without exception, Felix included. It wasn't just fear, it was a much deeper, a primal chill that clawed at their hearts, like an instinctive recognition of something beyond their comprehension. But as terrifying as the horse-like entity was, it wasn't alone. Nearby, another presence captured half of the screen. Its form was distinctly humanoid but just as dreadful. This entity had no discernible facial features, just a smooth, featureless face that made its existence all the more unsettling. But what truly drew every eye were the 7 brilliant cores embedded in its chest, each one glowing with a holy brilliance that pushed back against the darkness. These hearts thumped in perfect harmony akin to a well-oiled instrument, releasing beams of radiant light that seemed to purify the very atmosphere around it. Above its head rested a crown too, but this one was adorned with 4 stars, each one glowing faintly and surrounded also by countless circular halos. The holy light clashed with the oppressive darkness of the horse-like monstrosity, and for a brief moment, it felt like balance. But Felix and the rest had their hearts skip a beat as they witnessed the whole scene. The featureless entity was crucified. Its arms were spread out, bound in place against a tall and dark pole made of skulls. The morbid structure was twisted and hideous as each skull was etched with expressions of pain and despair. The pole rose into the void like a twisted monument. Felix's breath caught in his throat, a sense of helplessness and despair washing over him like he watched the crucifixion of the most important being in his life. Every single human shared his expression, as everyone stood frozen with eyes wide in horror. They felt like they would rather have themselves crucified in place of that featureless being, even when this was the first time they saw him. The horse-like entity took a step forward, its vortex-like eyes all converging on the crucified figure as if to drink in the sight of its suffering. The featureless entity hung motionless, its head bowed and its 7 hearts light remained unwavering. Suddenly, out of those dreadful eyes emerged black claws, each one was sharp, intangible, and dripping with dark energy. The claws twisted and extended, reaching out toward the glowing and brilliant hearts embedded in the chest of the crucified entity. One by one, the claws pounced forward, ripping each celestial heart out in a vicious manner. With each heart torn from its chest, the radiant glow of the featureless being dimmed, the holy light fading into the overwhelming darkness that surrounded them. As the hearts were torn away, the pitch-black entity voiced with a deep rough voice, using a language unknown to the human watchers, a language that seemed to resonate through the void itself. But even though the watchers couldn't understand the original words, they heard a voice dubbed in their minds, translating the entity's speech. After a struggle that lasted for more than 10 billion years, I have finally prevailed. The featureless entity raised its head at last, causing the dimming light from the remaining hearts to cast a faint glow on its smooth emotionless face. Despite its dire situation, there was no fear, no pain, only a calm that seemed to transcend the situation entirely. Arviler, if using a replica of the chains of the Great Order is how you consider a victory, it said with a calm dismissive tone, then so be it. Arviler, the monstrous entity sneered, its maw twisting upward, exposing dark fangs. 8 Saurus, you know damn well, a victory is a victory. He replied, the translated words gushing with contempt. 8 Saurus, the featureless entity gazed at his enemy with an air of indifference and then spoke, I agree, a victory is a victory, but know this, there will come a day when you will regret those same words. A faint smile broke on his face as he finished, leaving Arviler to break into mocking laughter. The sound of it was so guttural, that it seemed to echo endlessly through the void, carrying an unmistakable arrogance. I am Supreme Arviler. He announced coldly, I have no concept of regret. As he said this, a final much larger claw materialized from the eyes and plunged at 8 Saurus' chest, leaving 3 long gushing wounds on his chest. The wounds were deep to the point that they struck the central heart and the 2 other hearts on its sides, leaving a lasting mark on the left heart. As all the hearts were taken out, the remaining glow was extinguished in an instant. Supreme Arviler ignited a dark flame on top of his palm. Without an ounce of hesitation, he threw it underneath the crucified Supreme 8 Saurus. The dark flames instantly grew intense, consuming 8 Saurus' body in a blaze that seemed to incinerate not just the surface but his true essence. The watchers stared in horrified awe as the light was engulfed, reducing the mighty being to nothing but ashes. Within moments, there was nothing left but the 7 hearts floating in the void without any purpose. Supreme Arviler raised his head, his 1,000 vortex-like eyes shifting to the 7 hearts in satisfaction and a hint of melancholy. The games won't be the same without you, farewell old rival. As he said this, Supreme Arviler turned around and disappeared through a vortex of dark energy, leaving behind the 7 wounded hearts. Instantly after, a melodious voice resounded across the void with a certain solemnness. In the Battle of Twilight, Supreme Arviler has emerged victorious. Universe N057 ascends a step to the Blessed Isles. Following the announcement, a pillar of celestial light descended, illuminating the darkness with an otherworldly glow. As the watchers turned their eyes upward, a figure emerged from within the blinding brilliance, plummeting with absolute grace. The angelic being, seemingly cast down from the heavens, had 12 wings, 6 on each side, all glowing with a brilliant white light, their feathers gleaming like falling stardust. His body bore angelic features, elegant lines, and sculpted limbs, clothed in silvery and formless robes that quivered as he descended. But, his face struck fear into the hearts of all who saw it. He had 5 eyes adorning his face, each one arranged in an uneven, almost chaotic pattern that seemed to follow the viewers no matter where they stood. And in the center of it all, a single lip formed a disconcerting line. Emotionless, expressionless, adding to the sense of wrongness. As the being descended near the 7 hearts, he voiced again with the same melodious tone, in the Battle of Twilight, Supreme 8 Saurus has perished. Universe N309 has descended a step to the blighted grounds. Silence prevailed on the battlefield, seemingly like the angelic being was addressing the populace, but at the same time, there was no response. Yet, he continued. As per the rules imposed by the Great Order, once a Supreme perishes in the battles of Twilight, it will be a permanent death. Thus, unless Universe N309 appoints a new Supreme to participate in Supremacy games, it will forfeit automatically each game until it falls off the blessed staircase. Soon, the angelic being looked directly into the camera, seemingly gazing into Felix's eyes and the rest. Then he uttered, Universe N309 is 20 steps away from the blighted grounds. I was your game master Solarius. He constructed a prayer posture and voiced reverently one last time, all praise to the Great Order. The moment he was done speaking, the screen turned pitch black, reflecting the sea of humans all gazing at its surface with stunned and stupefied expressions. Everything they had witnessed and heard was simply incomprehensible in their minds, as they had no idea what had just happened. Yet, before they could even wrap their minds around such insanity, Empress Emily waved her hand and manifested 7 glass containers, each one holding one of the hearts displayed on the screen. The moment Felix and the rest of the humans' eyes landed on those hearts, Empress Emily uttered emotionlessly, "We are Universe N309. Chapter 1926 The Multiversal Plane." As the truth bomb was dropped, everyone was left staring at each other in stunned silence, seemingly seeking to find a resemblance of reassurance from one another, but to no avail. Everyone was shell-shocked, with many thoughts roamed their minds regarding the whole situation. If it wasn't for Empress Emily being the one delivering the news, they would have already labeled her as a first-tier bullsh**ter. Fortunately, Empress Emily didn't leave them brewing in their thoughts for too long. What you have just watched was the last footage of a twilight battle between our Supreme 8 Saurus and Supreme Arviler. They are called Supreme Beings because they are the consciousness of their corresponding universes. Consciousness of the universe. Felix frowned in confusion. Does she mean that our universe is actually alive, with its own mind? How can that be possible? Those same thoughts coursed through everyone's minds. Unfortunately, everyone was still muted, so no one could ask anything. Thankfully, Empress Emily planned on explaining everything from A to Z. She waved her hand and a holographic manifestation of the universe appeared before them. It was spherical, surrounded by a glowing aura, and had an unfathomable number of galaxies suspended within it. From a distance, it resembled a beautiful shiny marble. "This is our universe." As she said this, Empress Emily zoomed out until billions more like spheres emerged at once, each one floating near another without directly coming in contact. Those are just a small portion of other universes in the multiversal plane. Empress Emily said emotionlessly, "Each one is conscious and has absolute authority within its territory, however." She suddenly expanded again, not giving even a minute for those poor souls to register her shocking truths. After the expansion was over, Felix and the others had their hearts skip a beat at the sight of those universes being all contained within a spherical white nebula that was suspended in an absolute void. There was a literal wasteland of nothingness around it that seemed to extend to infinity. The white barrier is called the celestial cocoon, and it is the only thing keeping those universes stable and safe, brimming with life. This is the fate of any universe outside of the protective cocoon. When she finished, the infinite void seemed to be highlighted by trillions of stars. Oh my God! Felix felt his heart hit his stomach the instant he realized that each star represented a universe. The only difference was it had no spherical structure or a white aura surrounding it. Each one resembled a chaotic canvas of colors. Galaxies were thrown everywhere, akin to guts spilling out of a wounded animal. As the light faded off those universes, they seemed to be consumed by the darkness of the void. This infinite expanse of void is called the Blighted Grounds. Empress Emily uttered expressionlessly, "With the death of Supreme 8 Saurus, our universe is on a straight path to get expelled and join those perished universes, sealing our fate once and for all. Any questions?" Suddenly, everyone found out their voices had returned. Yet, silence prevailed inside the large hall. With everything said, it was nearly impossible not to be confused, overwhelmed, and petrified. Fortunately, there were many leaders with great emotional restraint as they quickly crafted the most critical questions and didn't hesitate to fire them out. "How did you come across such information? Why is this the first time we are learning about it? Is the metal race the only one with such intel? Or are the 10 rulers all on it?" The minute one voice echoed across the hall, it seemed like it had set a fire inside everyone's chests, causing a thunderous ruckus to emerge. Yet, Empress Emily left them be and listened to their noisy ruckus, seemingly picking up the important questions from the bunch and highlighting them through the chaos for everyone to hear. "After careful analysis, I assume that Supremacy Games is a system used to weed out the weak universes and expel them from the celestial cocoon. If this is true, why is this happening? Who is in charge of this ludicrous operation? How come our Supreme perished permanently when he is the consciousness of an entire universe? Isn't he supposed to be a god?" A serene scientist spoke calmly, yet, everyone heard him. "I have many doubts. Was the SG Alliance founded on lies? Was it truly founded to stop wars raging out between races by holding out games, or is it all just a ruse to create a united front? An infamous politician joined in with his series of questions. If all of this is correct, why are we being told? Shouldn't this be an issue to solve between you 10 rulers? After all, none of us knew about the existence of this multiversal plane, Supreme's cosmic battles, or whatnot. What do you expect from us humans, who don't even have a cultivation system, to do anything about it? As those questions kept resounding in everyone's ears, they realized that there was no point in yelling together. Thus, they quieted down and waited with solemn expressions for Empress Emily's answers. Felix also kept a deep furrow as he waited with everyone else, feeling like he was in a lucid dream. Supremes? Multiverse? Blighted grounds? Celestial cocoon? How could he adjust his sense of reason when he was just thinking about how to convince some low-level company representatives and instantly skipped to an existential crisis affecting an entire universe? It was like a child learning about 1 + 1 = 2, suddenly being told about quantum mechanics. The shift was just too extreme. All he could do was keep his mouth shut and his mind open to all possibilities. Fortunately, he had Empress Emily as the teacher. First of all, we have summoned you here since we believe you are the key to our salvation. Empress Emily spoke calmly, but, we will go into details about this later. For now, you deserve to learn about the true history of our universe and the origins of the SG Alliance. I will keep it brief. She paused. Everyone knows that the metal race is motivated by our search for the truth are of universe and existence. Unbeknownst to the public, we have already found out after we invented a device capable of piercing through the veil of our universe, helping us see the multiversal plane for the first time. While our device wasn't good at the start and merely showed us numbered data that proved the existence of other universes, we spent eons trying to perfect it until it started showing us live video feedback. As she said this, she showed everyone what the first video ever recorded of the multiversal plane looked like. Everyone's eyes were affixed to the screen as they watched the low-quality video of the closest universe to them, appearing as a moving sphere in an ocean of white mist. How the hell did they achieve such a technology? Felix was completely fascinated, knowing that it should be impossible to video record an actual universe from outside. Its scale was simply too unfathomable to be captured by any recording device no matter how progressed the technology. This made him presume that maybe the device was sensing and crunching a heavy load of data and using it to paint out a recorded image of what was supposed to be. In other words, they were looking into another universe externally, but merely what the calculation had resulted in, though, this was the metal race, making him understand that math was their fortitude. Suddenly, his thoughts were interrupted by a sudden flicker in the screen before it went completely dark. Just as everyone assumed that the video finished, 2 bright crimson eyes burnt through the screen, scaring the majority of watchers to the core. It felt like their souls were about to be snatched by a single stare. Those were the eyes of the neighboring universe's consciousness, Supreme Vldrux. Empress Emily said calmly, "That's our first interaction with an outer god and last without the permission of our Supreme Saurus. However, because of this incident, Supreme Saurus has finally decided grace us with his presence and enlighten us about everything." Chapter 1927 The First Contact. While Empress Emily was retelling the story of her first meeting with Supreme Saurus, it played in her mind in exact detail. Millions of years ago, during the Dark Ages, a massive cubical silver structure was seen orbiting a much bigger planet that was packed to the brim with highly advanced technological constructions, ranging from space stations, space elevators, defensive metallic nets, and more. This was the metal race capital home planet, Data Core Sanctum. The massive cubical structure was the veil piercer, the device Empress Emily and the majority of the metal race had invested their time and energy to build for the sake of finding the truth of their universe. Right now, at the heart of this breathtaking maze of metal and machinery, Empress Emily was seen surrounded by a group of her finest engineers and scientists. They stood on a platform, suspended in the very core of the planetary-sized structure, staring in silence at a massive screen extended across the far wall. There was a valid reason for their silence. On the central display, Two crimson eyes blazed intensely, something that exuded a sense of sentience, power, and perhaps even a hint of disdain. Empress Emily remained still, her expression was as expressionless as ever. But, internally, an unfathomable amount of calculations were going on that could explain this development. However, before she could reach a valid conclusion, a deep comforting voice resounded deeply in everyone's minds. Brother Vieldrux, excuse my little children for snooping on your territory, their curiosity has gotten the best of them. The moment he finished, the two crimson eyes blinked once warningly and then disappeared, leaving behind a shattered screen. He uttered nothing, but his attitude was clear that he wouldn't tolerate another peek at his territory. Who's there? Show yourself. Meanwhile, Empress Emily and the other ace kept looking around them for the owner of the voice, but to no avail. They couldn't even believe that their advanced technological anti-surveillance systems were easily bypassed. How fascinating, I didn't think one of my little children would come this far so soon. As the same voice echoed in the central arena, it was now accompanied by a celestial holy figure. The moment he manifested before everyone, he introduced himself with a faint smile on his featureless face. Don't be too alarmed, little one, I am Aetsaurus, but you can refer to me as Supreme. Foreign presence detected, calculating consciousness level, calculating, the calculation failed. Every single AI around Supreme Aetsaurus heard the same message ring in their minds, making them feel a sense of dread arise. Unlike other life forms, the metal race feared and dreaded only one thing, the unknown. Thus, for a race known to possess the strongest consciousness in the universe to fail their calculations, meant that Supreme Aetsaurus consciousness prowess was on a different plane of understanding. Who are you? Empress Emily asked with a solemn tone as she readied every weapon in the veil piercer in his direction. Supreme Aetsaurus sensed the weapons, yet, his smile remained unchanged. I am the truth. With a single sentence, Empress Emily and the rest of her subordinates seemed to have their souls enlightened as a sea of information poured inside their minds like an endless waterfall. They saw the birth of the universe, the creation of constellations, and how life was breathed into planets across all stellar systems, each race more unique than the latter. All of this was done by a single entity, Supreme Aetsaurus. Yet, what confounded them was the millions of scenes related to the multiversal plane, the endless games, and the grind for survival, leaving them doubting their minds, something almost impossible for Ace to feel. When the sea of information was over, Empress Emily and her subordinates gazed at Supreme Aetsaurus for a split second before taking a coordinated knee almost instantly. Greetings, Master. It was like their entire system was reset to worship and listen to Supreme Aetsaurus' orders. One would think that he forced them to react like this, but in reality, every one of them felt obliged to swear their allegiance under his banner. It was for a simple reason: he was their father, their ancestor, their universe, their everything. Haha, how cute! I am starting to understand why my peers are becoming more open to interacting with their children. Supreme Aetsaurus smiled warmly. Seeing that he was still standing, Empress Emily immediately waved her head and crafted a throne of magnificent proportion, using the nanotech that powered the entire structure. Master, please take a seat. She requested respectfully while still keeping her head lowered. After she had witnessed the events in the multiversal plane and what Supreme Aetsaurus went through to ensure the survival of the universe, her respect was born out of genuine reverence instead of fear. Sure, she knew that Supreme Aetsaurus had to fight for his survival since he was the consciousness of the universe, which meant, he was primarily fighting for his life. Still, it didn't change the fact that they were existing because of him. Ah, no need, little one, I am not planning to stay for long. Supreme Aetsaurus smiled, I just want you to avoid peering too much into the multiversal plane. If you catch the eyes of some unfriendly gentleman, it will create unnecessary annoyance to me. This was probably the reason Supreme Aetsaurus decided to show himself and even give the metal race the truth they were seeking their entire lives. All to make sure that they stay away from provoking the wrong entity with their eternal quest for answers. What made Empress Emily admire him more was the fact he could easily erase them from existence and nub the problem in the bud without even making his presence known, or, he could simply halt their attempts by making it impossible to peer past the veil of existence. But, this would make them stray away from the truth, which was the same as giving them an eternal death sentence to search for the unsearchable. In simpler terms, he was kind. "We understand, we will disable the veil piercer right away." Empress Emily responded with a serious tone. "Good." Just as Supreme 8 Saurus nodded with an appreciative gentle smile and planned to leave them be, Empress Emily swiftly requested, "Master, is there any way we can assist you in your journey? Just permit us and we will do whatever it takes to help you win more games. Please Master, after knowing about the truth, we simply can't go back to our old ways." Another AI beseeched with a knee down. The rest started bowing one by one as they requested the same thing. The metal race was always motivated to find answers to any sort of question that popped into their mind. At the moment, while Supreme 8 Saurus showed them the truth about their universe, he also opened up the door for a whole different ocean of mysteries. The metal race simply could not function properly if they weren't working on finding answers for them. Seeing their eager solemn looks, Supreme 8 Saurus couldn't help but chuckle to himself, "I don't need anyone's help, but their cute eagerness is too much to turn down." As the universe's consciousness, anything that the metal race could do, he could do 1,000 times better. That's why, he never bothered to use any of the races he crafted in his universe. The only reason he breathed life into his body was to make it less cold. Why not? Supreme 8 Saurus smiled kindly, "I do need someone to run errands once in a while and gather information." The moment Empress Emily and the rest of AI heard this, they didn't hesitate to proclaim out loud with a stern tone, "We won't let you down, Master. Don't worry too much about it, just do your best." Supreme 8 Saurus chuckled one last time before breaking into light particles. After he left, silence prevailed in the central room. They were not given any sort of instructions, and since he didn't tell them to reach out to him, all they could do was stare at each other. "Empress, your orders." Soon, everyone turned to their Empress, returning to their original hierarchy. "We await." Empress Emily uttered calmly. She understood that when Supreme 8 Saurus needed them, he would reach out on his own. For now, all they could do was wait patiently. Chapter 1928 The Chosen Ones. Back in the hall, Empress Emily continued her narration from that point onward, telling them how their bond with Supreme 8 Saurus grew when he reached out to them for their first mission. She didn't go into details about the mission, but she did tell them that he started giving them more and more errands to run for the sake of assisting him in his battles. However, they soon realized that some of those missions might be more fitting for other races instead of them, which made them seek his permission to bring in outsiders' help. That's when Empress Emily reached out to the Hive race, the Dragon race, the High Elves, the Heavenly Turtles, and the rest of the powerful races during the Dark Ages. When those leaders found out about the truth, their reaction was more or less similar to the Metal race. Even the proudful ancient dragons under ancestral dragon Ymir lowered their heads in worship before the Supreme and vowed to help him in his journey. Since we didn't want the truth to break out and reach the public, knowing that our Supreme wouldn't be too pleased with his identity fully exposed, we decided to found the SG Alliance and take our battles to virtual reality. Empress Emily narrated steadily, "But, we didn't have the best technology back then, and we knew that the majority of other races wouldn't bother to join the alliance. Fortunately, our Supreme is generous and saw our plight. Without even sounding a request, he perfected our virtual reality to the point it became considered a real illusion with 99.99999% realism. We took it from there on our own, merging our technologies with illusion to become what it is today." Wait, what? Even the UVR origins are a lie. This really makes you question your reality. UVR was always too freaky and fascinating to me. Being an illusion operated under a god himself makes more sense. Wait, isn't our Supreme dead? How come the UVR is still operating normally? Most watchers didn't take the news lightly as it made them feel like they were living in a lie their entire lives. First, the Scullions' purpose was never to limit casualties or stop the wars in real life, but a mere front for the real Union concerning assisting the universe's consciousness in his multiversal battles. Now, they hear that even the UVR, which modernized and accelerated the growth of the entire population of the universe, was created by the universe's consciousness himself. One's mind was capable of only processing a couple of shocks at once. Yet, those humans were being slapped right and left with horrific truths they would have never found even if they lived 10 different lives. This made quite a few highly alert individuals understand the severity of the situation before them. For Empress Emily to pull no stops, this means, what she is about to ask from us cannot be simple. Felix frowned coldly, it might even be sacrificial. Felix understood that his social status universally was no different than a bug before the eyes of dragons and other authoritative races. Thus, he didn't let Empress Emily's openness to truth fool him as he knew that nothing was free in this universe. As he was swimming in his thoughts, Empress Emily continued her story about the true origin of SG Alliance, telling them about how the games were introduced later on and that some of them were even copied from the true multiversal supremacy games. It was like they yoinked a well-developed system and added their own twists to it, which later on, developed to the point, that it became the culture of the entire universe. With that, Empress Emily concluded the true history of the Scullions' origin. Of course, every human summoned was smart enough to understand that what she told them was mere surface-level information. In reality, millions of years had gone by since the foundation of the SG Alliance. Now, that they knew about truth, many parts of history could be brought up for questioning. However, this wasn't the time to be discussing such details, which they knew none of them had the authority to pull out of Empress Emily's mouth. Thus, they kept their ears perked in focus and watched as Empress Emily pushed the 7 celestial hearts up front. For the questions related to the multiversal plane or our Supreme, I am afraid there is no point in telling you, at least, not before we succeed in finding a new replacement for our Supreme 8 Saurus. Empress Emily uttered expressionlessly. Many of the humans weren't too pleased with her response as they wanted to learn more about the mysteries of the outer worlds. Too bad, they could only accept what was given to them. This brings us to the reason for summoning you. As Empress Emily mentioned this, everyone gulped a mouthful in dread. Felix placed a hand on his chest to calm his agitated heart while keeping a stoic expression at what was about to come next. The short answer is we believe the replacement is one of you. Hey! What now? Alas, even with his preparation, the answer still threw him off guard, leaving him questioning his ears. His reaction was shared by the majority of humans as every one of them assumed the absolute worst before. Replacement? Us? Humans? I thought we were called to be sacrificed for a summoning ritual. Likewise. Is this some kind of a joke? How can we humans even come close to replacing the universe's consciousness? We can't even kill a slime with our own hands. No one was overreacting in the slightest as humans were truly considered one of the weakest races in the universe, with no cultivation system to help them grow stronger like other races. The only good traits in their possession were their outstanding adaptability, cockroach-like reproduction, infinite desire for more, and intelligence, though, the 2 letters were a rare state, not every human owned, unfortunately. We understand that humans are weak by nature, and to be honest, we were fairly surprised that our Supreme has chosen your race to be the only one with the capability to replace him. Empress Emily said calmly. Supreme 8 Saurus had chosen us. Felix raised an eyebrow in surprise. Somehow, his voice was picked up by Empress Emily as she gazed at him and answered, "Yes, this has nothing to do with us and it never did." Empress Emily pointed at the 7 celestial hearts and continued, "Our Supreme seems to have predicted his untimely death and prepared a countermeasure to ensure our existence at least once he is gone. Unfortunately, he hasn't told us any details." Empress Emily added, using his own words, the 7 celestial hearts will be the ones choosing their new host and owner as long as he is a human. Thus, we have gathered you here, the 1% of the 1% in your race. The strongest individuals, the smartest people, the most shrewd, the geniuses, kings, and leaders of many fields. We used Queen AI to devise a special algorithm to pick you from the infinite ocean of your kind, which means, if you were summoned here, you have something that might move the 7 celestial hearts. After hearing this, the majority felt a sudden heat arising from the bottom of their stomach, making them giddy and excited. Some didn't make it obvious, keeping their heads lifted like being picked meant nothing to them. Most of them were kings and queens as they used to be at the very top of the ladder. Still, when they looked around and understood that more than 90% of leaders weren't chosen, they couldn't help but feel an burning sense of self-esteem and arrogance overwhelming them. As for the quirks, who didn't even know why they were chosen, they had no idea how to react. Felix was included. Algorithm. What did Queen AI see in me that she didn't find in others? Felix frowned in doubt. I know I am smart, but it's nowhere near the level of some of the stars around here. What kind of requirements were used to be exact? This doubt roamed everyone's minds as they kept looking at each other, realizing that they were truly a ragtag group in every single field. Empress Emily didn't seem to have any intentions of giving them any clarification. Without further ado, she created a new platform that was a mere step away from the 7 celestial hearts, then she called out a name. Denzel Morn, please come forward to be tested. Chapter 1929 The Chosen Ones. 2. As Denzel Morn stepped onto the stage, Felix couldn't help but reflect on the man's impressive accomplishments. He is one of the brightest minds in genetics and biochemistry, making strides that few others could claim. The majority of humans also kept showering Denzel with respectful looks as they knew he was believed to be one of the few geniuses with the potential to take human evolution to the next level. His work on genetic enhancements had already led to significant advances in immunity and cellular regeneration, pushing the boundaries of what the human body was capable of achieving. To Felix and the others, seeing Denzel approach the 7 celestial hearts felt like witnessing one of humanity's best hopes stepping forward for a chance of transcendence. If only one human can be chosen, then, it's bound to be me. Denzel thought to himself, his strides brimming with confidence. Alas, the moment he stood on the platform, no reaction was recorded. The celestial hearts remained still, offering no recognition or sign. Is this normal? Denzel inquired while his expression slowly turned dark. No one knows how the celestial hearts will choose their new host. Empress Emily said expressionlessly, but, no reaction is no reaction. How about I touch? Before Denzel could voice his complaint, unwilling to accept his failure, Empress Emily waved her hand and he got teleported to the corner of the hall. Everyone turned to gaze in his direction, seeing that he was seething in silence. His reaction was understandable since everyone here was given a chance to transcend to godhood and literally own the entire universe. It was an unimaginable shortcut that no one knew was possible. That's why when the shock value started fading away, those humans started doing what they knew best, praying for each other's downfall and begging for themselves to be chosen. Uncaring about their thoughts, Empress Emily announced the next tester. Next, Amelia Hunkins. A captivating woman walked forward, swaying left and right while wearing tall heels and a pink miniskirt. Almost everyone knew her as she was one of the most famous megastars in the galaxy with a following crossing the hundreds of trillions. She was a singer, actor, host, interviewer, and the list goes on. She might look like any woman, who relied on her beauty to climb the social ladder, but everyone here knew that she must not be underestimated. Any celebrity who climbs this high and maintains their position is a wolf in sheep's clothing. Felix narrowed his eyes, understanding that her IQ and EQ were on the high end. Thus, everyone's expressions turned solemn the moment Amelia walked in front of the 7 celestial hearts. To their dismay, the 7 celestial hearts had made a reaction as the heart on the far right flickered once. Ahi? What does this mean? Amelia wondered with a cutesy confused look. It means you proceed to the next stage of screening. Empress Emily responded calmly as she teleported Amelia to the opposite corner of Denzel. Thank God, I really thought she was chosen right there. Next stage of screening? Does this mean, the 7 hearts are going to react to multiple participants? I assume the Empress is planning to give each individual a chance. Since Empress Emily had made it clear that those tests were new and foreign, it made them understand that a chance would be given to every one of them. As expected, Empress Emily continued calling names one by one to the platform while the 7 celestial hearts remained as quiet as a midnight owl. After Amelia, more than 10,000 humans were tested over 5 hours and yet, none of them caused the hearts to react, not even a little. This made Denzel's side keep growing at an explosive rate compared to Amelia's side. This is bullshit. Bullshit, I tell you. How can those stupid hearts approve of asking a singer and ignore me, an admiral with hundreds of battles under my belt? Of course, not every test went smoothly as many participants were considered as the highest upper echelons of the human race, which meant if they were rejected, it caused a massive hit to their ego. Kings, queens, admirals, and such were affected the most, making them create a scene each time one of them was rejected. Unfortunately for them, Empress Emily couldn't care less about their identities or social standing. The instant they voiced their complaint, she kicked them off the hall while making sure to erase their memories of the whole gathering. Although she didn't tell them this, no one was surprised if she went for it. After all, they were not asked to sign a contract or such. Empress Emily would never make such a rookie mistake unless she was confident that no information would be leaked from here. As for abusing their rights, the moment they clicked on the link and entered the hall, they gave up on them. Just like that, hours went by and before long, more than a day had passed. Fortunately, Amelia wasn't the only one chosen as a dozen more were added to her side. However, the ratio was still as crazy as ever with more than 300,000 people getting rejected. It didn't seem like Empress Emily had any intentions to stop the screening until each individual passed. Thus, names were called non-stop for hours and hours until finally, Felix's turn arrived. Felix Maxwell, please step onto the platform. The moment Felix heard his name, he was jolted awake. Yeah, yes. As he stood up and walked through the slightly less crowded hall, he received all types of glances, ranging from curiosity and confusion. Felix Maxwell, I never heard such a name before. Is he a reclusive businessman? I have no clue either. How interesting. Just as Felix's mysterious identity started to build some hype over him, warranting many intrigued glances, a disdainful voice shattered this image instantly. What a joke! What kind of algorithm did Queen AI use to summon a lowly businessman from a backwater kingdom? Hey? That can't be right. Ha ha ha. It's true, I just searched for him. As more people started to realize that Felix's social standing was considered significantly lower to them, their curious looks became mocking in the blink of an eye. Everyone still had access to the network here, which meant, a single search and a photo were more than enough to expose Felix's entire identity. With such a weak background, each individual looked at him like a peasant, who snuck inside a royal gathering. Unfortunately for them, if there was one thing Felix prided himself in, it would be his thick skin. Thus, he didn't bat an eye or lowered his head in shame at their mocking words and disdainful looks. He just kept walking with a faint polite smile on his face until he reached the platform. The moment he faced the 7 celestial hearts, the noise faded into the background. Deep down, Felix knew that he would be ignored by the 7 hearts just like the million other humans, but still, he held on to the fantasy of seeing one of the hearts lighting up. Alas, seconds went by, and nothing seemed to happen. The 7 celestial hearts were as quiet as ever. Ha ha ha, even kings and queens were turned away, yet, he thought he had a chance. He might have gotten summoned due to his remarkably thick skin. Maybe, ha ha ha. The bitter and irritated rejects on the loser's side didn't let Felix's rejection slide in the slightest. It was like they finally found a target to vent their frustration on, a target, who they knew had absolutely no authority to retaliate. Hey, how foolish of me! While Felix wasn't affected by their words, he sure as hell felt disappointed to see the seven hearts remain dim, but soon, he cracked a faint content smile and turned around, accepting that his destiny wasn't meant to be changed here. However, just as he wanted to step away, the central core flickered for a split moment, causing everyone's voice to die out bit by bit until silence engulfed the hall. As Felix gazed at their stunned and dumbfounded looks, he couldn't help but feel his core skip a beat. Don't tell me! Just as he was about to turn his head, Empress Emily announced, Felix Maxwell, you have passed to the next screening stage. Hey! Chapter 1930 in 3 words. After a brief silence, the atmosphere erupted like a dormant volcano as the furious voices of the rejected humans rose and filled the metallic hall. Are you freaking serious? One yelled with a face flushed in anger, how could he be chosen of all people here? This is bullshit. Another voice joined in of a woman with clenched fists and a contorted expression of disbelief. He's a measly lowly businessman. What makes him so special? The entire selection process is rigged. I demand a redo. I refuse to believe those hearts to be sentinel. The outrage spread like wildfire through the ranks of the rejected, their voices overlapping in indignation. Unfortunately, Empress Emily couldn't care less about their criticisms and whines. She simply teleported Felix to the chosen side and got rid of those with the loudest mouths. As people started seeing their peers getting snuffed rapidly, their loud disgruntlement disappeared. Meanwhile, even the ones chosen didn't seem too pleased with Felix's joining their side. They kept giving him irked glances, like the sacredness of being chosen by the seven hearts had been tainted by his presence. Felix ignored everyone's disdainful glances and kept gazing at the 7 celestial hearts with a sense of wonder. They think I am worthy to become their new owner, he murmured. Although it sounded too crazy to believe, it still lit up something in Felix's heart as he knew that the 7 celestial hearts must have seen something in him. He could excuse Queen Ai choosing him, but he couldn't think less of being chosen by the celestial hearts instead of millions of the finest humans. I have to know what it saw in me. Felix narrowed his eyes solemnly as he kept watching the rest of the humans getting rejected continuously. After a long while, the last participant finally took the stage and without any surprises, he was sent away disappointed. The initial screening stage has been concluded. Empress Emily announced calmly, 40 individuals have induced a reaction from the 7 celestial hearts. Amelia and the rest of the chosen ones showed arrogant smirks as they gazed at the rejected ones. Before the failures could cause another scene, Empress Emily added, since we don't have much data about the process of the emergence of the new universe's consciousness, you are allowed to stick by and wait in case another opportunity arises. If not, you may leave this place. Usually, the moment one fails to be picked, he should take a hike. After all, there was no way the celestial hearts would skip past their future possible owner. But, Empress Emily decided to keep them around in case all the chosen ones failed to ascend. In her mind, they were already at an impasse and they had nothing to lose in trying everything. Tisk, I ain't going nowhere. One of the kings sat down with a cold expression, I have to see who's more worthy than I. I am sure the 7 hearts will turn back to me once those useless chosen ones fail to produce any results. Another haughty queen showed the same attitude. Even though I wasn't picked, this is an amazing opportunity to research those mysterious hearts. A scientist showed a wide innocent smile while bringing out a holographic notepad, seemingly delighted just to be kept around. While each one had their own reason for staying put, not a single human had decided to leave. That's to be expected when they understood that their memories would be erased the instant they leave this hall. But, if they stuck behind, there might be a chance of Empress Emily allowing them to keep the information. Let's begin the second stage of screening. Without further ado, Empress Emily clapped her hands and teleported all the rejects to a newly built-in stand at the back of the hall. The chosen ones were teleported to the center of the hall. Then, she brought the 7 celestial hearts closer to Felix and the rest, making them hover a mere couple of meters above their heads. How is she doing this? When Felix saw this, he couldn't help but wonder how could Empress Emily control the 7 celestial hearts. Did Supreme Eight Saurus make his hearts listen to her before he perished, or were they sentinel to the point they can understand everything going on around them? The answer came sooner than he anticipated. Without Empress Emily's orders, the 7 celestial hearts suddenly released 7 different colors before they merged into a massive colorful dome. The chosen ones were placed inside of it. What's going on? Riesel uttered with a stern expression as he raised his guard. He was an infamous mercenary, who was born in a war-torn land and lived his entire life battling for survival. He was the oldest of the bunch and the one most feared and respected, making Emilia and many other chosen individuals edge slowly over to his side for protection. Before anyone could process the situation, 40 pillars of light descended from the ceiling of the dome in a circular shape around the chosen ones. Each pillar seemed to be facing an individual, making them feel like it was calling for them. Are we supposed to enter those light pillars? Felix frowned, not having a good feeling at all. It was like his instincts screamed at him to not get any closer to those pillars. It gazed like Riesel and the others felt the same. Alas! Step inside! Empress Emily ordered expressionlessly. Empress Emily had no plans to comfort them, as she also had no clue what those pillars meant and what was the point of them. The only thing she knew was that everyone was going to enter them, whether voluntarily or forcefully. If you are scared, trade with me. Yes, right. Stop wasting our time and go in. Cowards, given a shot at godhood and they are still hesitating. The rejects didn't hesitate to remind them that they were holding the line and that if they refused to follow the 7 celestial hearts' instructions, they should bow down. Upon hearing their loud chatter, Emilia and the rest gritted their teeth and stepped forth towards the pillars. Only Felix and Riesel remained in the center, watching as their peers walked toward the pillar of light with clear signs of concern and anxiety. What will happen? Felix wondered with a solemn look. Will they get teleported to the multiverse? Will they meet with a memory of Supreme Eight Saurus? Will they receive trials and they have to complete them? All options were on the table when no information was given. Unfortunately, Felix and Riesel weren't allowed to stay back and spectate as they started feeling like their bodies were forcefully being pushed to their own pillars. They weren't too surprised as they knew that it was Empress Emily's doing. I can walk on my own, Riesel uttered coldly as he continued what was parted of the distance. Felix kept his silence, but he also moved on his own after stealing his heart. After everyone stood a mere half a meter from the pillar, they glanced at each other and then took a collective step forward. The moment they went in, they disappeared from everyone's vision. As Felix opened his eyes slowly, his senses gradually returned as he took in the sight around him. He found himself inside a small cozy sphere with transparent walls glowing faintly. The warmth of the light gave the space an oddly comforting feeling. Underneath him, lay a lake that stretched endlessly around him. The water was white yet serene. Where am I? Is this a consciousness space? He murmured as he gazed around him, scanning the endless expanse of water, but found nothing. Curious, Felix reached out with his hand, his fingers brushing the surface of the water under him. The moment his skin made contact with the cold, smooth water, the lake seemed to ripple, and then, suddenly, from the depths of the lake, a spiritual featureless figure emerged. Felix recognized him immediately, making his heart skip a beat. Supreme Eight Saurus. He spoke under his breath while his pulse quickened at the unexplainable overwhelming aura flowing over his body. Supreme Eight Saurus merely showed him a faint gentle smile and asked, in 3 words, tell me why you want to ascend to the supreme position. This. Felix was parted baffled immediately.